Oxford Read and Discover, Level 6. All About Space by Alex Raynham. Read by Roger May. Published and copyright Oxford University Press, 2010. Introduction. Space is everything that's around planet Earth, and it's bigger than we can imagine. When you look at the sky at night, you can see thousands of stars. Did you know that the Sun is a star too? There are also billions of other stars in space, and billions of planets. How many planets do you know? What do you know about them? What can you see below?
Discover!
Now read and discover more about space. Chapter 1. Our Solar System. Stars are huge balls of hot gas. A star with planets around it is called a solar system. Our Sun has 8 planets. This is our solar system. Our galaxy. Groups of stars are called galaxies. Each galaxy has billions of stars. Our solar system is in a galaxy called the Milky Way that has 200 billion stars. There are billions of other galaxies in the universe.
Discover!
The universe is everything that exists, all the stars in all the galaxies. It appeared in a single moment, called the Big Bang, about 14 billion years ago. Before then, there were no stars. Our amazing Sun. The Sun and all other stars are made of 2 gases, called hydrogen and helium. The hydrogen changes into helium in a process called nuclear fusion. This process produces heat and light. Our Sun is about 150 million kilometers away from Earth, but it's hot enough to burn you at the beach. Plants on Earth use energy from the Sun to grow. Animals and people also get their energy from the Sun because they eat plants. Earth and the Sun. A planet goes around, or orbits, a star. It takes our planet Earth 1 year to orbit the Sun. A planet also turns on its axis. It takes Earth 24 hours to do a complete turn on its axis. When a place on Earth is opposite the Sun, it's daytime in that place. The planets in our solar system. All the planets in our solar system orbit the Sun. A year is the time that it takes a planet to orbit the Sun. It's 365 days for Earth. Mercury and Venus are near the Sun, so they have shorter years because they travel a shorter distance around the Sun. A year on Mercury is the same as 88 days on Earth. Planets that are further from the Sun have longer orbits. A year on Neptune is the same as 165 years on Earth. Each planet in our solar system is different. But Mercury, Venus and Mars are rocky planets like Earth. If you landed on these planets, you would find rocks, and you could walk around on them. Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus and Neptune are called gas giants They are much bigger than the rocky planets, and they are made mostly of gas. Dwarf planets. Astronomers have discovered 5 dwarf planets in our solar system. Dwarf planets are like very small planets, and they orbit the Sun. The biggest dwarf planet is called Eris, and it's 2,500 kilometers across.
Discover.
The most famous dwarf planet is Pluto. It was discovered in 1930, and for more than 70 years it was called the 9th planet in the solar system. Now it's called a dwarf planet. Chapter 2. The Inner Planets. The inner planets in our solar system are Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. They are the nearest planets to the Sun, and they are made of rocks and soil. Venus, Earth, and Mars have gas around them, called atmosphere. Mercury. Mercury is the smallest planet in the solar system, and it doesn't have an atmosphere. A planet's atmosphere traps the Sun's heat and keeps the temperature warm at night. Mercury is very hot in the daytime because it's the nearest planet to the Sun, but it's very cold at night. When the temperature on one half of Mercury is 427 degrees centigrade, the other half is minus 173 degrees. Venus. Venus is the second planet from the Sun, and the nearest planet to Earth, but it would not be a nice place to visit. Pressure is the force or weight of something on your body. Venus has more gas in its atmosphere than Earth, and all that gas creates pressure. If astronauts visited Venus, the pressure would kill them. In the atmosphere around Venus, a gas called carbon dioxide traps heat from the Sun. The temperature on Venus is 462 degrees centigrade. That's hotter than a pizza oven. The sky on Venus is yellow because there are clouds of sulfuric acid. This dangerous chemical can burn metal.
Discover.
Venus turns very slowly on its axis, but it orbits the Sun very quickly. So a day is longer than a year on Venus. Earth. Earth is our home, and it's the third planet from the Sun. Billions of years ago, Earth was very hot. Later, the planet became cooler, and oceans of water formed. Life began in these oceans about 3.5 billion years ago. Earth is a great place for life because it isn't too hot or too cold for liquid water. Plants, animals, and people need liquid water to live, and they also need oxygen. Most of the gas in Earth's atmosphere is nitrogen, but 20.7% is oxygen. A moon orbits a planet, and often looks like a small planet. Earth has one moon, but some planets have a lot. Our moon takes 27 days to orbit Earth. Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and Neptune all have moons too. Mars. Mars is the fourth planet from the Sun, and it has 2 small moons. Mars is smaller than Earth, and it's called the red planet because chemicals make the soil red. Mars has some amazing places. Mons Olympus is a volcano, and it's 25 kilometers high. That's 3 times higher than Mount Everest, the highest mountain on Earth. The Valles Marineris is a huge canyon. It's 10 times longer and 3 times deeper than the Grand Canyon, the biggest canyon on Earth.
Discover.
Some scientists think that there were rivers on Mars in the past, but then the temperature became colder. Now all the water is ice. Chapter 3. The Outer Planets. The 4 outer planets in our solar system are the farthest away from the Sun, and they are Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. Do you know what they are made of? Gas giants. The outer planets are bigger than the inner planets, and they don't have a rocky surface. We call them gas giants because they are made of hydrogen, helium, and other gases around a rocky centre. Inside these planets, pressure changes the gases into a liquid. Jupiter. Jupiter is the 5th planet from the Sun. It's the biggest planet in our solar system, and it's more than 1,000 times bigger than Earth. Jupiter has about 60 moons, and some of them are bigger than planets. Huge storms move clouds of gas around Jupiter, and they make beautiful colours in the atmosphere. Jupiter has a big red circle of storm clouds called the red spot. This is the biggest storm in our solar system. Storms on Earth can last for days, but this storm started 300 years ago, and it hasn't finished yet.
Discover.
Jupiter and the other gas giants have a lot of moons. Scientists are discovering new moons all the time. Saturn. Saturn is the 2nd biggest planet in our solar system and the 6th planet from the Sun. There are thousands of rings around Saturn. The farthest ring is millions of kilometers from Saturn. The rings are made of billions of pieces of dust and ice. Some pieces of ice are very small, and some are bigger than houses. Saturn's rings are different colours because of chemicals in the ice. Saturn has about 60 moons. The biggest moon is called Titan. Titan has atmosphere, clouds, and lakes. But the lakes are made of chemicals, not water.
Discover.
Jupiter, Uranus, and Neptune also have rings, but they aren't as big or as beautiful as the rings around Saturn. Uranus and Neptune. Uranus is the 7th planet in the solar system. It's 2.4 billion kilometers from the Sun. If you travel another 2 billion kilometers out into space, you will reach Neptune, the farthest planet from the Sun. Uranus and Neptune are far from the Sun, so they are very cold. The temperature on Neptune is minus 214 degrees centigrade. Both planets are made mostly of gas, like Jupiter and Saturn, but different chemicals in their atmospheres make them green and blue. Uranus has 27 moons and Neptune has 13. Chapter 4. Rocks and Ice. There are two rings around the Sun, called the asteroid belt and the Kuiper belt. The asteroid belt is between Mars and Jupiter. It's made of rocks called asteroids. The Kuiper belt is further away than Neptune. It's made of pieces of ice. Asteroids. Some rocks in the asteroid belt are the size of houses, but others are many kilometres across. When planets come near them, or other asteroids hit them, these rocks can leave the asteroid belt. Sometimes they travel toward the inner planets. Comets. Comets are huge pieces of ice and dust, and some of them are 50 kilometres across. Comets come from the Kuiper belt, or from further away in space, but sometimes their orbits bring them nearer Earth and the Sun. When comets come nearer the Sun, they become hotter, and they leave pieces of ice and dust behind them. This is called a comet's tail, and it can be millions of kilometres long.
Discover.
Halley's Comet is a famous comet. It comes near Earth every 75 or 76 years. We will see it again in 2061. Meteors and meteorites. Meteors are pieces of rock, dust or ice that enter a planet's atmosphere. They come from asteroids and comets. Most meteors burn when they enter the atmosphere, but sometimes pieces hit a planet's surface, and these pieces are called meteorites. More than 1,000 metric tons of ice, dust, and rocks from space land on Earth every year, but most of these pieces are very small. Sometimes big meteorites hit Earth and make a huge hole called a crater. Big meteorites don't hit planets very often, but they are very dangerous. In 1994, 21 pieces of a comet hit Jupiter. Some of the explosions were bigger than our planet Earth.
Discover.
In 1908, a meteorite exploded in the sky above the Tunguska River, in Siberia in Russia. No one lived there, but a forest of 80 million trees was burned. About 65 million years ago, there were no people on Earth, and the animals were different too. Dinosaurs lived here. Then, one day, a bright light appeared in the sky. It was a huge meteorite. Some of it burned in the atmosphere, but a piece hit Earth. It was about 20 kilometres long. The meteorite crater is in Chicxulub, in the Yucatan in Mexico, and it's 180 kilometres across. When the meteorite hit Earth, there was a huge explosion. Scientists think that fires and acid destroyed most of the world's forests. Clouds of dust covered the sky, and light from the sun didn't reach Earth's surface. it became very cold for many years. At about the same time, the dinosaurs and 70% of all the plants and other animals on Earth died. Chapter 5. Astronomy. Astronomy is studying the planets and the stars, and people who study astronomy are called astronomers. Do you know what they have discovered? Ancient astronomers. Thousands of years ago, people in places like China, Iraq, and Greece used the sun, the moon, and the stars to calculate the time of year and the seasons. This is how they knew the dates of festivals and when to plant seeds. Many people, like the ancient Egyptians or the Incas of South America, thought that the sun was a god. They built beautiful temples for the sun.
Discover!
Sunlight falls on the statues in this ancient Egyptian temple at sunrise on 2 days every year. These were important days in the Egyptian calendar. Understanding the solar system. Most ancient astronomers believed that Earth was at the center of our solar system. They thought that the Sun, the other stars, and all the planets orbited Earth. In 1543, a Polish astronomer called Copernicus said that the Sun was at the center of our solar system, but people didn't believe him. Later, other astronomers like Galileo Galilei from Pisa, now in Italy, believed him, but important people stopped them writing about their ideas. Almost 150 years later, a British astronomer called Isaac Newton proved that Earth orbits the Sun.
Discover!
Isaac Newton discovered the force of gravity. Gravity makes things fall to the ground on Earth. It also makes the planets orbit the Sun. Galileo and the first telescopes. Telescopes help people to learn about our solar system. In 1609, Galileo used one of the first telescopes to look at the night sky. He saw mountains and craters on the moon, and 4 moons around Jupiter. The first telescopes were very small. Later, people made bigger telescopes, and they discovered new planets and moons. Our galaxy and the universe. When Galileo looked at a bright area in the night sky, he discovered that it was made of many stars. Later, people discovered that this is the center of our galaxy, the Milky Way. For a long time, astronomers thought that the Milky Way was the only galaxy in the universe. Then, in 1930, an American astronomer called Edwin Hubble discovered another galaxy. Now we know that there are billions of galaxies in the universe. Astronomy today. Today, astronomers use huge telescopes to study the stars. They can see the light from galaxies billions of kilometers from Earth. Astronomers use different telescopes to look for other types of energy from stars called radio waves and X-rays. Astronomers also use spacecraft to explore our solar system. Spacecraft orbit or fly past other planets and take photos. Some spacecraft have visited other planets and moons too.
Discover.
The Hubble Space Telescope has orbited Earth since 1990. It can take better photos than telescopes on Earth because it's outside Earth's atmosphere. Chapter 6. Life on Other Planets. In stories, aliens are living things from another world. But are they real? Is there life on other planets? Astronomers are looking for life in our solar system and on planets around other stars. Martians. 100 years ago, telescopes were smaller, and it was difficult to see Mars clearly. Astronomers thought that they saw lines on the surface of Mars, and some people thought that they were canals. At the time, people were building great canals on Earth, like the Panama Canal in Central America. Some astronomers imagined aliens building these canals and living in cities on Mars. People wrote stories and made movies about aliens from Mars called Martians visiting Earth. Now we know that there aren't any Martians, but we still make movies about them. Water and bacteria. Life on Earth needs liquid water, carbon, and gases like oxygen and nitrogen. When scientists look for life on other planets, they look for places that have liquid water. Bacteria are simple living things on Earth, and they can live in very hot and cold places, and even inside rocks. Scientists are looking for bacteria on Mars and in other places in our solar system. Life on Mars. It's very cold on Mars, so all the water on the surface is ice. Many scientists think that there is liquid water in the soil, or even in underground rivers. Maybe there is life on Mars too. At the moment, robots from Earth are exploring Mars and looking for life. Europa. Europa is one of Jupiter's moons, and it's covered in ice. The surface is very cold, but scientists think it's warmer inside. Maybe there are oceans under the ice. Maybe there are bacteria or other living things in the oceans too. One day, people will send robots to explore Europa and to look for life. Titan. Saturn's largest moon, Titan, is the only moon in the solar system with atmosphere. It has rivers, lakes, rain, and clouds. These are made of chemicals called hydrocarbons, and scientists think that there is water under the surface of Titan too. Living things are made of hydrocarbons and water. Maybe one day we will discover life on Titan. Life in other solar systems. What do we know about life in other solar systems? Astronomers have found hundreds of planets near other stars, but they are still looking for a planet like Earth. Some scientists think that there are lots of planets like Earth in our galaxy, and millions in the universe. Maybe there is life on some of them. On another planet, billions of kilometers from here, maybe alien astronomers are looking at the stars.
Discover.
Sometimes people see unusual objects in the sky, called UFOs. Some people think that they are alien spacecraft, but they are usually things like balloons or comets. Chapter 7. People in Space. More than 450 astronauts have seen Earth from space. They have done experiments, visited the moon, and taught us a lot about our solar system. Would you like to travel in space? The first astronauts. In 1957, Russia sent the first rocket into space. It took a machine called a satellite. Then, on the 12th of April 1961, another Russian rocket called Vostok carried a small spacecraft into space. Inside, there was a man called Yuri Gagarin. He was the first person in space. His spacecraft orbited Earth for 108 minutes and then returned to Earth. Later, Russia and America built bigger and better rockets, and more astronauts went into space.
Discover.
Today, hundreds of satellites orbit Earth. We use them to study the weather, to take photos, and to do lots of other things. Astronauts on the Moon. In 1968, astronauts in the Apollo 8 spacecraft orbited the Moon for the first time. Then, on July the 21st, 1969, the Apollo 11 spacecraft landed on the Moon. Millions of people watched on television when two American astronauts called Neil Armstrong and Edwin Buzz Aldrin stepped onto the Moon. It was an incredible moment. For the first time in history, people walked on another world. Another 10 American astronauts visited the Moon between 1969 and 1972. They did experiments and collected rocks and soil. They also drove a special car called a lunar rover, or moon buggy. Space shuttles. In 1981, a new type of spacecraft flew for the first time. It was called a space shuttle. Space shuttles can fly into space many times because they take off like a rocket and they land like a plane. They have taken very big things into space, like the Hubble Space Telescope. Space stations. A space station is a place in space where astronauts can live and do experiments. The first space stations were very small, but the International Space Station, ISS, is much bigger. It was built in space. The first astronauts visited it in 1998. Now, teams of astronauts from different countries live and work on the space station all the time. Living in space. If you drop something on Earth, it falls to the ground because of gravity. In a spacecraft, astronauts don't feel gravity because their spacecraft is moving very fast. This is called zero gravity, and you can float. In space, things float, so astronauts use a material called Velcro to stick everything to the walls. Astronauts cook food in special containers, and they use a special shower because water floats too. They also use special sleeping bags to stop them floating when they sleep. Gravity makes you strong on Earth because you exercise your body every time you walk or lift something. Your body doesn't do this in space, so astronauts can become weak. They have to use exercise machines to keep strong.
Discover.
The ISS orbits Earth once every 90 minutes. It's difficult for astronauts to sleep because the sun rises or sets every 45 minutes. Astronauts wear masks over their eyes. Chapter 8. Our Future in Space. 100 years ago, space travel was a dream. Now, people are living in space. What will happen in the next 100 or 1,000 years? Space tourism. A few tourists have already visited space, but their trips cost millions of dollars. Now, people have designed special space planes to take tourists into space. They are cheaper than rockets, but at the moment, space plane trips only last a few hours. In the future, maybe tourists will orbit Earth and stay in space hotels. Maybe they will enjoy amazing views of Earth from the hotel windows and play games and sports in zero gravity too. Living on the Moon. We are building new spacecraft to take people to the Moon. The first astronauts will visit the Moon in about 2020, and they will stay there for a week. Later, astronauts will build a moon base. Scientists, engineers, and astronomers will live in the moon base for months so that they can do experiments. Living on the Moon won't be easy. Food and equipment will come from Earth, 386,000 kilometers away. There is no atmosphere on the Moon, so people will wear spacesuits to protect themselves when they go outside.
Discover.
The sun produces a dangerous type of energy called radiation. Earth's atmosphere protects us, but scientists must find a way to protect people in the moon base. Exploring Mars. With today's spacecraft, it would take astronauts about 2 years to reach Mars and return to Earth. It would be very difficult to take enough food and water for such a long trip, and the sun's radiation would be very dangerous too. In the future, scientists will probably invent faster spacecraft and ways to protect the astronauts from radiation. The first astronauts will probably visit Mars in about 50 years from now. Radiation isn't a problem for robots, and they don't need water, oxygen, or food. Engineers are designing new robots called robonauts. They look and move like people, and they can do almost everything that astronauts do. If it's too difficult or dangerous to send astronauts to a planet, robonauts will go there. In 1,000 years from now. Maybe one day people will live on Mars or in huge space stations. There are lots of materials like metals, ice, and hydrocarbons in our solar system. We can use these materials to produce oxygen and water, and to grow food. We can also make fuel for rockets and build new spacecraft. If we invent very fast spacecraft, maybe we will explore other solar systems one day too. 1,000 years ago, people travelled by horse, and we didn't know that the world was round. In 1,000 years from now, we will have new technologies and new ways to explore space. What do you think our life will be like? Where do you think we will live?